What's up, folks? BCSG here. Okay, something a little different today. I'm thinking of starting a new series. I've been thinking of this series for a while, to be perfectly honest. I just never really got down to doing it. You know, things always get in the way. Fishing gets in the way. Some sort of new tackle gets in the way and kind of screws up my plans. But anyway, the series I'm thinking of starting is one of those fishing 101 things or fishing basics, whatever you want to. I haven't decided what I'll call it yet. You'll probably see it featured in the title when this video comes up eventually. But yeah, anyway, what I want to talk about today is the basics of leader, snaps, and knots. That is what leader to use, what leader material, what kind of snaps that I use to clip on my lures, and what knots I use for general purpose fishing, at least the type of fishing that I do here in Singapore. So we start off with leader. There really is only two primary materials that you would encounter when you're talking about generic leader material. You have monofilament and fluorocarbon. As usual, if I'm looking there, it's because I've got notes. I don't want to go off track. So I don't want to overcomplicate things, this being a basics series. I'm just going to summarize a lot of it. I mean, there's tons of literature, very specific stuff and research and all that you can find just by Googling, talking about monofilament versus fluorocarbons and stuff like that. There's tons of literature out there. So if you guys want to learn more, you guys can always Google it, and you know, it's pretty good reading. So generally, how would you choose between mono and fluorocarbon or monofilament? Monofilament is basically a nylon or any form of copolymer, and fluorocarbon is usually 100% fluorocarbon. I mean, don't ask me about the exact materials and whatever used. I'm not a scientist. I don't really know any of that stuff. I just listen to whatever the marketing says, right? So anyway, yeah. When to use mono? Generally, you would use monofilament if a monofilament leader if you're dealing with surface or slightly subsurface lures. Basically, working lures that are in the top range of the water column. You want to use mono because mono tends to float, whereas fluorocarbon tends to sink. You don't want, the sinking and the floating tends to affect the action that is imparted to the lure. It can affect it somewhat. So if you wanted to choose between the two, or you wanted to choose specific stuff, I would say for surface and slightly subsurface lures, you want to go for monofilament leader. For everything else, you can use fluorocarbon. But having said that, I personally feel that you can get away just using one or the other for everything. I know some folks who use monofilament leader for everything. It's cheaper, much cheaper actually, monofilament leader than fluorocarbon. And I personally use fluorocarbon for everything, including my topwaters. I haven't really seen, I do notice a slight difference in action, because especially if I cast a topwater like a popper or a surface pencil, if I cast it out there and I let the line really sit for a long time, yes, that line will sink. And when I go to rip the popper or when I go to twitch that pencil, you can definitely tell that the action is affected. But for general purpose topwater stuff, I haven't found a big enough reason to have to tie different kinds of leader on for different kinds of lures. So I tend to stick with fluorocarbon for pretty much everything. Why? Well, firstly, according to the science, fluorocarbon is less visible. It reflects light, it's less visible to the fish. I don't know how true that is compared to monofilament, but that's what the literature says. More applicable to me in real world application, I like fluorocarbon because it has less permanent memory. Now, what am I talking about when it comes to memory? You see, when you spool monofilament line on a spool, okay, and you keep it there for a while, when you pull it out, it comes out in coils. When you're talking about monofilament line or leader, those coils are pretty much permanent. I mean, it'll come off the spool in coils, you can pull it straight and all that, and it's like a spring. It'll always come back to that coiled effect. But when you're talking about fluorocarbon, it'll still come off the spool in coils if it's been on there for a while, but the minute you pull it with a slight amount of force and let it go, it tends to straighten out. So that's what I mean between having just regular memory and permanent memory. I feel that monofilament has permanent memory, fluorocarbon doesn't. And you pull it, it stays straight. It's all around easier to manage because of that. And yeah, that's why I prefer fluorocarbon over monofilament. I personally use Siga, I don't really know how to pronounce it, Siga's Abrase X. I use that almost exclusively, not just for leader material, I also use it for mainline material for various specific applications on spools, on specific spools that I use on my reels. So Siga Abrase X, Abrase X is Siga's abrasion resistant line of fluorocarbon lines. If the name wasn't obvious enough, Siga has a few different kinds of fluorocarbon lines, the two most popular being the InvisX and the Abrase X. So InvisX is the slightly more supple, less abrasion resistant line, which is a hot favorite, and then the Abrase X being a little bit stiffer but much more abrasion resistant variant. I also buy my lines in spools, actual mainline spools. This is not leader material. This is actually mainline. I buy it in full mainline spools of 200 yards, because it's more economical than buying leader material, which is usually sold in spools of 30 to 50 meters, and it costs about 30 to 40% more. I just find it more economical to use this, to buy actual mainline spools. Of course, I ship this Siga Abrase X or InvisX is not sold in Singapore to my knowledge, so I have to ship mine in from Amazon. And on top of that, any other fluorocarbon mainline worth using, that is, the keyword is worth using, that is sold locally is ridiculously expensive, and the ones that are not expensive are really terrible. Like they're not even worth looking at. So that's it for the leader part of it. That's why I use the leaders that I do. Let's move on to snaps. Okay, so snaps. Once again, there's much that can be said about the pros and cons of using a snap versus tying the leader or the line directly to the lure. Once again, too much for me to discuss. I don't really want to get into the technical aspects of that. I only want to touch on the practical aspects. If I'm in a situation, so this is the guideline that I go by. If I'm in a situation where it's only practical for me to have one rod with me. So I have like 2 boxes of lures, only one rod. There is no way I'm going to tie direct. It just takes too much time. Every time I want to change lures, I got to cut and retie. So that's when I use a snap. If I'm in a situation where I can bring multiple rods with me, such as, I guess the best example, it's difficult to cite an example for local anglers, because most of us, it's like urban fishing, we're walking and fishing, and we can't be carrying around like 4 or 5 rods. But in the Western context, most of you guys who fish on bass boats, now you have all your rods lined up there. You can put like 10 rods on your boat if you want to. For that purpose, it's definitely okay to tie direct to the split ring on the lure, and each rod has its own lure. All you need to do, pick up a different rod with a different lure to change lure types. So that's the guideline that I follow when I decide whether or not to use snaps. Now, what kind of snap do I use? Again, many different kinds of snaps, and everyone has their favorite. I categorize snaps into 2 main categories: round snaps or oval or angular snaps. Oval or angular, same thing. So round or angular, that's the 2 categories I work with. I consider any snap to be a round snap if the contact point of the snap, meaning the part that contacts the eye, if that part is round, I consider it a round snap. If it's angular or oval in shape, that's not a round snap. So let me see if I can give you an example. Let me take out one of my snaps. Okay, so there. As you can see, this is the contact point where the snap contacts the eye or the split ring or whatever. It's round. Okay, oval, I don't even have an example of an oval snap, do I? No, I don't. So yeah, oval wouldn't look like that. It'll be much more angular than that. And I feel that that round profile versus the oval profile, round profile gives a little bit more. It's like a split ring, right? Split rings are completely round. It gives the lure a bit more freedom of movement. So when doing lure fishing specifically, I prefer to use round profile snaps. Okay, let's see. What kind of snap do I use? Not just the shape, but what kind? My favorite or my go-to kind of snap is what is called the quick snap or the duo lock snap. Oops, sorry about that. Just hit the camera. Okay, so this is what a duo lock snap looks like. Yeah. Okay, this is a duo lock snap. Okay, it's a pretty common snap. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. So I use duo lock snaps. I use a few different brands. There's Owner, Cultivar, Cross Factor, Psycho snaps. And I do have some snaps that I got from AliExpress. Can't really speak for those. This is the same kind of snap, but I haven't gotten enough testing in to really determine whether they are of any usable quality. It's not, you don't really need to save money with snaps, guys. Snaps are a pretty important part of your fishing tackle lineup, I guess. It's not something that you should be saving money on, to be perfectly honest. That me buying the China snaps, that's just out of personal curiosity. So yeah, important aspect, don't save money on it. Buy good snaps from Owner. Yeah, buy good snaps. You don't want to have a good fish on and lose that fish because you bought some cheap low quality snap. All right. Okay, so let's see, size of snaps. Okay, so everyone, if you followed me for a while, you know the kind of fishing that I do, normally, for the most part. In Singapore, urban fishing, peacock bass, stuff like that. I use a lot of bait finesse gear, I use a lot of ultralight spinning gear. The poundages I deal with is anywhere from 4 pounds all the way up to, at most 12, 15 pounds. I rarely stray into the 20-pound category unless I go into the jungle or something, heavy cover, stuff like that. So for my lighter ultralight stuff, I tend to use size 000, 000, or 00. That's the size I use for my ultralight applications. I might go up to size 0, but usually I skip size 0 and go straight up to size 1 for general applications up to like 15 pounds and stuff like that. And beyond that, it really depends on what I'm doing. If I'm going to like a pond like Baralang where the fish are freaking huge, and if I don't want to tie direct for some reason, or if I'm fishing a lure in a pond like that, I definitely go with a much larger size, something like, I think this is a size 3, it's like 85-pound test or something like that. So yeah, it really depends. Beyond that size, it really depends on what kind of fishing I'm doing. So yeah, that's the kind of snaps that I use. And lastly, we're going to talk about knots. So few types of knots, primary types of knots. And I will, of course, especially for the knots, what I'll do is actually put links in the description. So please check the description for each knot that I use. Some knots have different variations of the way you tie it. I'll try to link you to videos that show the knot being tied the way I tie it. Okay, so for the first knot we're going to talk about is connecting your main line to the spool of the reel. That's when you're spooling new line on a reel. I use what you call an arbor knot. It's easy to tie, simple to use. It's basically a cinch knot. You tie the knot, you cinch it down to the spool. Of course, you wrap that loop around the spool a few times before cinching it down. And if you're using braid, I would advise you to tie a length of monofilament backing. Very short one, maybe 2 feet, that's all you need, because that monofilament is going to grip the spool a little bit better than braid does, and it's going to prevent the line from slipping on the spool. Otherwise, under heavy load and heavy drag, you're going to notice that your line's letting out, but your drag isn't. Okay, so next, connecting monofilament or leader material or that backing material, connecting a monofilament or fluorocarbon to your braided main line. The knot that I use is the FG knot. Now this, over the years, it's become really popular. I'm sure most of you either use it already or know of it. It is not the easiest knot to tie, but it is one of the slimmest profile, strongest knots that rarely ever fail me. Like, I personally am really anal about my knots, okay, and so I don't really encounter many knot failures. It does happen. I just had one happen recently, but it doesn't happen often, and the FG knot certainly helps with that in terms of reliability. So I'll put a link to both the Arbor knot and the FG knot in the description below. The FG knot, I know the exact video I'm going to link as well. That is the video that I learned, that version of the FG knot. Because you see, the problem with the FG knot is it's hard to tie. You need all your fingers, you need both hands, you need your teeth and all that. And traditionally, you know, when you're using braided mainline tied to a fluorocarbon or monofilament leader, and then you tie the FG knot at home, you go out there and you break off. You're going to have to retie that on the fly, and some folks can appreciate that it takes quite a while and it's quite a bother to have to retie an FG knot on the fly. So this video that I'm linking in the description, the guy shows a way to tie it that is significantly easier to manage if you're standing out in the field trying to retie that knot. You know, you're using the rod as weight to keep the line tight, and the way you tie it, it's the same knot, it's just a different way to tie it. It's much easier to tie it when you're out in the field. So go check out that link. That's the way I tie my FG knot. Okay, so the last knot I want to talk about is the knot that I use to tie my leader material to either my snap or tying directly to the split ring. Okay, this knot does not have a name. It is not the no-name knot. I know there is a knot out there called the no-name knot. I'm just going to call it the nameless fluorocarbon knot because I have seen a few videos online featuring this knot. All of them tie it the same way, but none of them have a name for it. And I find it not easy enough to tie, not quite as easy as like the clinch knot or something like that, but I have some issues with the clinch knot. I used to use it in the past, and I used to use a few other kinds of knots, and those have failed me time and time again. This one, not that it hasn't failed me, in fact, like I talked about my most recent knot failure, that was in fact, the line failed at this very knot, but that was, I can't even remember the last time this knot failed me, so it was probably just a bad day. Anyway, so I don't recommend any other knot except this one when it comes to the kind of fishing that I'm doing. So I'll link the no-name or the nameless FC knot. I'll link it in the description as well to the exact video that I learned it from. Alright folks, so I couldn't find the video, the exact video that I learned to tie the nameless fluorocarbon knot from. I don't know, it's a bit weird. I remember there being at least 3 different videos on it, and I can't seem to find it anymore. So I'm just gonna do a video of me tying the knot right now. So the nameless FC knot just requires your leader material. You have the end of it right here, you've got your snap. Okay, what you want to do is you want to double the line over. Okay, double the line over like that. Okay, you want to have a good 4 or 5 inches of line. You don't want this to be too short, all right? You want it to be long enough because you need that length to tie the knot. So once again, you start with a single line, you double it over, and you take that loop end and you put it through your snap like so. All right, after that you pull it through Alright, so this is the loop end, this is the other end. You pull it through like that. So snaps hanging out in the middle. You bring it over and you hold it like this. Now you pick up the snap, you put your index finger through like this, alright, just so that there's separation, and you wrap it around 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And then you hold it. Now you see how there's this little gap right here? This gap? You want to take that loop and push it back through the gap. Like so. Alright, so the loop's through the gap. Okay, you want to wet the line. Alright, wet the line, and then you're going to cinch it down. Cinch it down nice and tight. Okay, don't pull it too hard yet. Give the loop a very slight tug because it tends to kink up at the end. Pull the tag end, grab the main line, pull it tight, pull the loop again, grab the tag end and the main line, pull it tight, and there you have it. Okay, so now you're going to have 3 tag ends, or 2. You're going to have the loop and you're going to have the tag end, and that's what you're going to have to trim. Okay, and I always trim my tag ends, leaving a decent amount hanging out. Alright, now it looks really long on camera, but really this is just about 2 mm worth of tag end. I think it's just a bit safer if you leave some tag ends so that it allows for any potential slippage. Like I said, it's very rare that this knot has ever failed me. I've had plenty of other more commonly used knots, especially the clinch knot, the improved clinch knot and stuff. I've had them fail me. This one has failed me once recently, and it's probably failed me another time, I guess. I just can't remember when, probably sometime really long ago, but yeah, it rarely fails. As you can see, it's a double line. Alright, it's a double line right there. 2 lines. Okay, so, and that's what makes it so strong. Okay, let me just do that again, just in case there are certain parts of the first round that you guys couldn't really see. Okay, so you have the length of leader, you double it over, you form a loop, put it through the eye of the snap, bring it over like that. Make sure your finger is through just to create that gap. Wrap it around 3 times. 1, 2, 3. You can do it 4 times if you're using a really thin line, like maybe 4-pound fluorocarbon. You can do it 4 times if you want to be safe. Okay, push the loop through the hole. Alright, wet it and cinch it down. Alright, cinch it down. After wetting it, pull that loop a little bit, cinch it down, pull that loop a little bit, cinch it down. You want to, the reason why you're pulling this loop is you're tightening. You want to make sure that everything is nice and tight before you really grab that and really pull. You just want to kind of cinch it down a little bit, pull the loop, cinch it down a little bit, pull the loop, and once it gets nicely formed like this, that's when you really pull. Of course, don't pull that hard if you're using like 4 or 6 pound leader. Okay, and then you trim the tag ends. Leaving about 2 mm of tag end sticking out. So that's it right there. That is the nameless fluorocarbon knot. Once again, if anyone knows the actual name of this knot, if there is a name, I'd love to know it, because someone invented this knot. Someone's got to have named it. Leaders, snaps, and knots. So that's about it for today's video. Let me know in the comment section if you guys are interested if this kind of fishing 101 kind of tackle basics video, if you feel that it's something that is helpful, if you feel that you think the series should continue, obviously I have a few videos already planned, so I will be rolling out a few videos in this series, but whether I keep on doing it or not, that will really depend on the response, whether you guys think it's useful, think you want to see more, and stuff like that. So definitely let me know in the comment section below. If you guys have any other questions, something more specific than what I've discussed here today, like I said, I did summarize a lot of it. Feel free to ask me the questions. I'll try my best to reply them as soon as I can. And if you guys like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give me a thumbs down. Share my videos with your friends if you learned something, and subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Tight lines, guys.